Hey everyone, welcome to the AVE Educate Podcast edition. Tonight's topic is about mentorship and certifications, and I have two very special guests with me tonight. Actually, two very credible guests tonight. People that I've looked up to most of my career and who are finally in a position where I wouldn't say I'm equal to them, but I'm in a position where I can be in the same level with them. And not even that either, because they're so much more intelligent than I am and have given so much more that I'm just playing catch up, to be honest. But I'm really honored to be here with Tim Cashall from T3 Academy, leading the way right now in corporate education and plethora of other things too that we could talk about today. And Kevin Ring as well with Nationwide is also leading in the front. It's East Coast, West Coast. We got the whole U.S. kind of trainers here that are training in this industry. And I'm really excited about this topic because we're talking about the difference between mentorship and certification, which a lot of you guys are always kind of debating out there in the industry. And this is kind of under the AVA umbrella. It's a very neutral space to talk about this. So, again, I try not to do too much talking because we have some very important people here. But I'll bring up first right here. I'll bring up Tim Cashall. Tim, how you doing, brother?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So you want to tell me a little bit about the T3 Academy you have going on? Give us a little background about it.
So T3 Academy kind of developed out of the pandemic. What we realized after the pandemic was that a lot of people who were in our industry who were starting out had to find probably other ways of making a living. So they kind of pivoted to other careers. And those of us who were in the industry for quite a while were making decisions about, okay, well, maybe we don't want to do this anymore and let's early retire or let's, transition to something that's not as intensive. So it left a big gap. And with the T3 Academy, the idea behind it was to try and get newer people into the industry, kind of, let's show people here, here's an industry out here that we really need people and you can get trained, in a relatively short amount of time and make a good living, once shows started coming back. But that's the thing is to try to train people and fill the gaps of knowledge that are out there for our industry.
I like that. And again, obviously I'm on the other end of this with the Evolve Technologies as director there, and we're doing similar things as well. And you guys are doing a great job. And Tim used to be here as well. The next person I want to bring in real quick, a man who needs no introduction. You guys all know him. He's been on social media a lot. Used to work for this guys a lot. Used to work for Evolve back in the days. Now is with Nationwide. Is Kevin Ring himself. Kevin, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. How are you, Omar?
I'm doing great. So tell me a little bit about Nationwide and what you got going on that side.
Absolutely. So at Nationwide Video, I'm the national training manager for an initiative we call Nationwide University. And the idea we have is to take video technicians and help turn them into video engineers. So we're looking at the V1s and the EICs of tomorrow and getting them comfortable with the equipment, the workflows, and all the pressures and fun that comes with sitting in the quote unquote hot seat. So how to elevate your game.
I like that. And Kevin, you got the East Coast on lock, West Coast down on lock. I'm working on the East Coast over here. Bunch of things going on here. So I'm sure you guys have heard this question a lot, and I'll let Tim, if you would like to go first. What is your thoughts when you hear about this argument? I'm sure you hear about mentorship versus certification. What are some of your general thoughts that come to mind?
Well, the answer would be which way is the best path. The answer is yes. It depends on what you're going for, and obviously, learning from someone hands-on through mentorship and being able to, walk in their shoes and do what they do every day and see how they do it is a great way to learn things. There's a lot of people that learn that way. There's a lot of people that learn from manuals that are rote people. And those are the people that go to certification classes, they learn a product, and then the next week or so, they're out there using that product. I would say that both have their pluses and their minuses. If you're not a good, person who's a hands-on learner, you like to read manuals, like to read details, then get a certification, but be careful. Don't get certifications in everything. Pick one or two products that you want to specialize in, and get a certification in that, and then try to find work with that product. Because your muscle memory is going to be what saves you every day. And if you can't, don't have a lot of practice with that piece of gear, you're gonna lose it. You're gonna lose the muscle memory, or you're gonna, not do really well on a show. So I would say there are reasons for both, and there are paths for both.
And I like that muscle memory. I'm ex-military. We were all about the muscle memory when it came to going down range. So that's super key, and it's good to hear that it's still key in the corporate world. Kevin, I asked you the same question: mentorship versus certification. What comes to mind first?
Well, I can obviously give the easy answer, which is there's a time and place for both. Personally, I've been quite fortunate in my career to work with fantastic mentors, Tim Cashall included, who I consider a near dear friend and mentor. Being able to have someone take you under their wing from a personal standpoint is hands down experience that you can't gain anywhere else. That said, equipment changes rapidly, quickly, workflows change. things are coming out new that nobody knows how to work. Really, the only way to learn the new equipment sometimes is to do a manufacturer certification course. So it's great to always have someone to fall back on, give you advice on technology, life, the workflow, the balance, but the certifications can become integral for making sure that you stay on the pulse or ahead of the pulse when it comes to new and emerging workflows and technologies.
I like that. And you brought up some key points here. Me coming into Evolve, I've been able to work with Eli, who's been a great mentor to me, and to teach me a lot of great things. And Kevin, I got to train under you actually, I think it was 2 classes total we've trained together. And you were a great instructor. I learned a lot from you. And Tim, we didn't get to work together, but I've watched a lot of your stuff online. I've watched and talked to you in the background a lot and spoken about you a lot to people. So you've been a great influence and a kind of a pillar of where to go to. And I really appreciate that drive, because it leads me to go to somewhere, right? And I'll leave this open to whoever wants to take it first. So if you're, again, Tim, you covered it very well here as well when you said there's no right or wrong path, right? It's kind of where you're at. And I agree with that 100%. What would you guys say for someone who's maybe 5 years in the industry and, we'll just do a couple scenarios here, 5 years in the industry and maybe money is tight. What would be, I guess, the option for them? If you guys could go on, and I can take that too, if you'd like.
Yeah, I could take it. I would say for 5-year person, by then you should have figured out what you're going to do, whether it's going to be audio, video, lighting, or whatever sub-discipline of those. You found something you really like or something you really have an interest in. And I would say by that point, you should have done at least 1 or 2 shows that you have either worked with the person in that position or you have been the person in the position. And really at that point, what you want to do is you're going to get a certification to learn more about the product. And what a certification really is, at least a manufacturer certification, is it's their chance to tell you how they intended for you to use the product. So in other words, we want you to do this step A, B, C, D, because this is how we design the product to work. And if you skip B, then something bad is going to happen or not going to happen what you want. So I think it's very important to distinguish that certifications on the manufacturer side is the manufacturer's chance to tell you, here's what we think, or here's how we want produced and design the product to work for you. And then you take it back to your work site and you go, okay, this is how I was shown to do this. You'd be surprised how many people don't know a lot of the simple things about a product because they just never were exposed to the manufacturer's theory of the product. So.
100%. That's totally accurate. There's so many things. My dad's a great person of RTFM. Read the manual, right? Huge fan of that. I did it my whole career, and I have tons of experiences where if you just read the manual and learned this stuff, these problems would be an issue. And I have a perfect scenario where I was on a show one time, and much younger in my career, and we were doing a 4A switcher. And it was a Hannibal 4A switcher at the time. And Hannibal 4A, for whatever reason, doesn't gen lock. Its default is to be off. So everybody was trying to figure out what's going on with the cameras. And I had read the manual before I got to take it out and test drive anything. And I just knew to turn it on. So the person who was on site, is a new switcher. Generally, switchers have very similarities to them, but each one has its little quirks, ins and outs. He wasn't aware of that. So they were having problems with the cameras. And I just showed up from a different room that I came down. I said, oh, yeah, I got this. No worry. Click, 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 click. And I was like the VIP of the day. So that's a very good point. Kevin, I saw you had something you wanted to bring into that real quick when I was...
I did. With the manufacturer certification, Tim really hit the nail on the head where it's the manufacturer's intention of how a product works. I am all for mentorship. I love mentorships. I love having mentors. I love having mentees. However, we're all human. We don't always know everything. We have bad habits. We make mistakes. And unfortunately, I see a lot of mistakes or bad habits or improper workflows be passed down from a mentor to a mentee. Yep. So while mentorship is integral, it sometimes is great to get that authority source from the ones who made it to ensure that you're using the optimal workflow.
No, I liked it a lot. I liked it a lot. So again, I kind of want to dive down this a little bit more because I feel we said some good stuff here, right? And I've had the same ideas of you guys are saying here, where there is no right or wrong pathway, and it depends on what you're doing and where you're at in your particular career. One of the things I find interesting though is that some people, and again, this is I want to say it's a cultural thing that we have, right? They don't think the certifications are worth it. Oh, if I got trained on something and I'm doing, and I'll use E2 as an example, right? A lot of people use E2. We're all familiar with E2. We're all trained trainers. Some of the things with E2 is that, oh, I learned how to use it and my clients are hiring me. Why do I need to get certified? And Kevin, I'll let you take this one. Why do you think the benefit is? And for me, that quick one would be, the benefit is that you are now, again, like what Tim was saying, you are now being recognized to be an operator on this. You're not just doing it because your clients are hiring you anymore. And maybe in that scenario where you were saying, Kevin, we're like, you're doing these bad habits because you were taught this by somebody else, and there's a better workflow or there's a better mentality to do it. So Kevin, sorry, I'll let you take over.
Absolutely. So I would say it's just as important on any piece of equipment to not only know what it does, but more important to know what it cannot do. Hold on, these are the automatic lights. Gotta love live. I'll just wave my arms around. So
Welcome back.
it's important to know what the system cannot do. Looking at the Barco E2, for example, there are a lot of times when people think that they instantly need a second E2 or a linked E2, when in reality, the one system they have might work. And while, yes, you on the field are making the show happen, you might be costing the production twice as much money because you're under the impression that you need a second, third, fourth E2, when in reality, there might be a workflow of dropping down the refresh rate, using program-only mode, utilizing native backgrounds in a more efficient way that could allow you to save the production a lot of money.
I like that. Tim, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I would say, there's probably another topic, to spin us off of that as far as certifications go, is that a lot of the critiques that I'm sure Kevin got and I get and everybody else who teaches certification courses gets is, I've been doing this for 10 years and I've never got a certification, and people get certifications, don't know what they're doing. And, they're not as good as the people that do it every day. The answer to that is, yeah, sure. You do it every day. It's going to be a habit. It's going to be something that's great. If you're getting a certificate in it and the people issuing those certificates, we can't pick out the gold star people every single time and make sure those are the only ones that do shows. With the certifications, it's going to be, they have passed the minimum criteria that the manufacturer has set. Here's the bar, and they can pass it and they can operate and answer the questions. But we are equivocally the DMV. You can pass the driver's test, but when you get on the streets, I have no control over that, and I have no control of what kind of a driver you are. So a lot of that comes back to mentorship and getting experience, and then getting the word of mouth out that, yeah, this person can do the show. So
the anecdote we used to always use, Tim and I, would be, you got your driver's license. It would be ignorant to get a Ferrari the next day.
Yeah, don't drive a Ferrari the next day. Exactly.
I like that. I like the analogy there. That is the perfect alignment. The one thing I would add to this, or see where you guys' thoughts were, is the argument that I've heard a lot is there are people that are getting certifications that just know the SCUI system and they're not really video engineers. Have you guys run into that scenario a lot in your profession and what you're doing, where you're meeting guys who they're just learning the software side of how to do things, but they don't really understand the actual video aspect of what they're doing?
That absolutely. Personally, I think that falls on almost to an extent to the trainer. There is a difference of teaching a workflow versus teaching the hardware or the software, or teaching the principles and the technology behind it. One thing I've always appreciated about Tim's classes that I've tried to emulate with mine is we break down the fundamentals of video engineering. While yes, we might be using a particular unit or a particular box today, science is science, technology is technology. If you understand the science and technology behind the workflow, everything else is quite simple. Not all certifications are made equal, unfortunately. So it really is when the manufacturer or the trainer themselves try to take it that next level to ensure that the students are set up for success. But yes, on the adverse, we have all seen horror stories of people who have gotten a certification from XYZ manufacturer, and you don't want that person running your show.
Yeah, I was going to say, case in point, back in the Barco days, people would sign up for the HDX or the FLM class for the projectors. And I guess the thought was that they're going to take a projection class. And no, you're taking a projector course. You're learning how the menu works and how the projector's features work. They're not going to show you how to double stack. They're going to show you where the handles are to widescreen blend, but they're not going to show you how to widescreen blend and figure out the pixel count and the overlap. That's the thing, is you have to, then of course, later on we developed courses that taught projection, because we realized there's a lot of people that don't know what projection is or how to do it. They take projector courses, but they don't get what they're looking for. And that's that basis of, okay, how does light work? How does, projectors align themselves and that kind of thing. So.
Yep, optics for sure is a big thing, and I feel like we're losing some of that a lot of the times now. Now a lot of guys are taking projector classes, and the warping's getting a lot better, and they're figuring that out, and they're like, well, I can warp it in. It's like, does it really look good though? Like if you really knew what you were doing and knew what you were looking at, you would see a lot of problems in this image right now. You're not seeing them
Take
because
10
you're so
minutes
used
to use the bubble level. Just use the level. It's
Yeah,
so much easier then. You're just lens shifting then.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite thing. And when I do projection, I just did one recently. I did everything on the well, we did them side by side, so it was a convergent. Did them side by side. I leveled them out there while they was off because we had a problem with power. By the time we got it on, I was pretty close, and the guy was like, "Oh, I've never had anybody do it so fast." And I was just like, how do you normally do this? And he's like, "Oh, I just warp it in." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna lens shift for like 10 minutes, and then I'm probably okay. I'll have to do maybe a little bit of adjustment in the leg here, a little bit of adjustment in the leg there." And they're in cages, which makes it again even easier, right? Because back in the day there was no cages, and I just literally moved the back left leg up a little bit, and it lined up, and it was like I was done. And the guy,
People are always so afraid to touch the physical projector.
yeah,
Move the projector. There's
Uh-huh.
more than the lens and the cage and the twisting
yeah.
and the warping.
But I've also seen on the back end or the other side of that where it's like, hey, you have one day to do 20 projectors, you have 10 hours, and you're like, okay, we're gonna warp it in because I don't got time, right? And that's sometimes
Technology exists for a reason. There's
Right.
a reason the manufacturers invested millions of dollars and hours of R&D to make it work.
Yep, we're solving problems for our clients. So it's no right or wrong. It's just there's an image quality that we are used to. Like, I want to see this. You want it to be here? It's here.
And see, that comes back to the example of mentoring, right? If you're working with projectionists who taught you to warp everything,
Oh,
then
there you
guess
go.
what? You're going to warp everything. If you
Yep.
work with projectionists who taught you geometry, and taught you the physical, then you're going to do that every time. So that's kind of, we're talking about mentoring versus certification. Here it is right there.
Yeah.
One
Yeah,
thing that always breaks my heart is I'll teach a training course and people will then realize that someone who maybe they've looked up to or looked behind their shoulder, I won't go so far as to say their mentor, but they realize that someone who they thought really knew a workflow, they realize, oh, that person might not be as skilled as I previously thought.
Yep. That's always a thing, but it's good for them for realizing it and good for them for getting to that point where they can increase their skill set, increase their level, and hopefully their circles are increasing and they're getting better and better at what they're doing, and they can pass that back to that person. Hopefully,
That's the key. That is the absolute key. Pass it back.
Yep. So I want to keep kind of going down this rabbit hole a little bit here. And Tim, I'll let you lead this one if you'd like. So when it comes to mentorship, what would you say some of the key things that people be doing to mentor the next generation that's coming in right now? Right now, there's a lot of fresh faces coming in. There's a lot of new people, and they're kind of just, winging it. And I want to say, I don't want to say that we're ignoring them or we're not giving them the due credit, but what can somebody do that maybe is watching this and be like, you know what? Why don't I step up to the plate? Like, what should they be doing to do that mentorship? To be a mentor to somebody.
If you're on show sites, you're usually going to have some hands that are going to come to you to help you with things. Trying to identify, the people that have maybe some skills or some interest, and try to lead them. Give them some responsibilities. Give them maybe a little more responsibility than you would if they were, didn't know anything at all. We have to really, if you're working in the industry right now, you're really going to have to help bring up the next generation or the younger ones, because there's nobody else going to do it besides us right now. As we really don't, there's no real formal education in what we do. Yeah, there's theater arts, or there's entertainment technologies, or something like that. But there's, as far as boots on the ground, in the show doing things, it's all the technicians that are on the show site that have to help the new technicians. Don't be afraid. This person's not going to steal your job. You're going to help them replace you someday. You're not going to be 65 years old, running Sockapex. You're going to have somebody else that's going to do it for you. Yep. So that's the biggest thing. And another thing too is if you're one of those people that's younger, is don't be afraid to take on calls for something that you are not 100% familiar, because believe it or not, we're happy to have somebody who's willing to learn. If you have the skills, we're willing to train you, if you're enthusiastic 100%. About it. And just as an aside, to talking about here in Vegas, just on a whim, there's a lot of open holes in Cirque du Soleil shows and all kinds of production shows because people have left and people are not coming back. And a lot of those positions, they're trainable. If you find the right person, they will train you. And the same thing happens, in live events. You find the right person, you train them, and then someday they're replacing you. Not replacing you, but they're taking over for you.
Well, essentially, you're moving up, right? You've trained your replacement for that position, so you can move to the next position. And that's the only way to move up in this industry. If you're an independent contractor freelancer and you want to move up and get the other client who maybe pays more or does more of the shows you want, or like you were saying earlier, you're now specialized more in this particular piece of equipment and they're doing it more. If you want to, still keep your relationship with your clients that you have and your circle of friends, you want to train your replacement so that he could take that and you can move on to the next thing and everybody's copacetic. So Kevin, I'll give you the same question here. What could somebody who's watching do to mentor the next generation coming up?
So it seems a little counterintuitive and counterproductive, but a big key to learning is to be given the opportunity to fail and the opportunity to make mistakes. And it's very easy as a mentor to want to protect your mentee from all issues and just swoop in and instantly give them the right answer, instantly lead them on the right path, instantly fix the problem for them. But at that point, there's no context behind why this is a better methodology. So allowing someone to do something improperly, obviously protect your show at all costs. Don't let them do something terrible, but allow them to make mistakes to see why the method you're showing them is the better method.
100%. No, I like that. Using failure not as a punishment, but as a way to learn and move and grow from it. Right. That's always key. And I think
Yes.
a lot of us, we're missing that nowadays. We're so afraid to fail. We're not doing it. And it's like, you need to fail in order to learn from it. Right. Because that failure will stick better to you emotionally than if you were just to always do everything right or any other way. This is a key to learning. And I think all of us have experienced that ourselves, and we do that on a constant basis. Just for this, anybody who's watching this, and you guys can obviously tell me if I'm wrong. When I'm doing a class for my students, I get asked questions constantly that I'm just like, man, I don't know, or I've never thought of it this way, or even more, man, I forgot when I was like this. This is what I learned. Here's, the 2 cents that I needed to get me to the next point. But there's a lot of times where you as the students are asking us things that the workflow is a little bit different than the way I would do things. Like that muscle memory that I have is not the same as yours. And that's teaching me another way to do something. Like, you know what, this actually is a little bit better. Let me incorporate this to my workflow moving forward. Or this is a different way to think about it. I like that. Or you've unlocked something in my mind about, oh, I see where you're coming from. Let me solve by, here's the answer, right? And these are things that you guys give to us when we're teaching as well. So we're also learning constantly as well when you guys are with us as well. I have tons of moments where these guys ask questions. I'm just like, I would never do this way, but if I didn't know, this is a situation, right? This is how I would solve it because you ran into this, and then you
really experienced that. I started to really see that when I would teach a certain manufacturer courses where I would get people not my world, rental, staging, live events, corporate, but I would start getting people from theater backgrounds, Broadway, installation, integration, film and television production, and seeing their own predefined workflows and conceptions. It definitely allows you to see things from a different perspective.
Right. It's like the outcome is similar, but you're like, man, that's kind of a longer workflow because of your way of getting there,
Yeah, a studio is going to have different needs than a live event that goes live at 7:00 tonight that I tear down at 10 p.m. and tomorrow is nothing but an invoice and a memory.
Yep, 100%. So now let's go to the other side of this, right? So let's say someone's coming into the industry, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to dive a little bit deeper. They come to the industry, and we'll do it both ways. So we'll do the first one is they come in the industry and they want to do the certification route first, right? Because they want to move up that ladder very quickly. They want to get in versus, and the next one we'll dive into. Actually, we'll do it this way. Who would want to answer that one first, Tim or Kevin? We'll do it 2 different ways. Kevin, you sound like you have an answer.
I'll take a stab at it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, I see that quite often where we get the young, eager young bucks who instantly want to take Disguise, for example. They want to become E3 programmers and operators, and that's perfectly fine. But without the fundamentals and foundations of video as a whole, they always become incredibly limited in their capacity and what they can do without understanding signal flow, output resolutions, and EDIDs. When I was with Disguise doing support, I would be talking to these programmers who are on very, very, very ridiculously high profile shows, and I would be explaining the concepts of SMPTE timing, VESTA resolutions, and EDIDs, and things that I would have wanted someone to learn that before they jump into a $120,000 box on $1 million show.
100%. So, and Tim, I'll give you the second question to this would be, what about on the other end of that? Someone who's been in, let's say, 15 years doing the industry already, and now they decided to take that next step to get the certification. I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to drive this into the audience. What would you say for that person who's gotten that they already have an established career industry and an established network of freelancers and contacts and businesses, what would you say for them who wants to get the certification at this point?
I would say, if you're making what you want to make and you have the clients that are happy with what you do, you don't need a certification. You are using the product in a way that works. Obviously, you're not having crashes and failures, so you must be doing something right. If you want to get certifications, let's say you want to try a similar product. Let's say you've been on one media server for the last 10 years and you want to kind of expand your knowledge to another media server. That might be your place to get a certification, because you're coming into that certification with 10 years of knowledge about, timelines and media imports and connector types and signal flow. And then you're just learning where is it and what do you call it on the other box. So that's what I would say, if you're in the industry or you're doing something for a long time and then you want to get a certification, you're getting certifications and stuff that is similar to what you know, but you're bringing that whole briefcase of your experience to the table with you. And it's got to make learning that product a lot easier. And one of the things you could do, biggest thing I tell people who have been in the industry that long trying to learn something new is forget everything you know, listen to what I tell you and follow along. Don't try to add in, oh, well, this box does that. Or I did it this way with the other box. That's the other box. It's not this box. So, try to come in with a fresh mind, with a blank mind, and you'll be surprised. You know enough stuff that, you'll get the ABCs of the new box and you'll pick it up really quickly.
I like that. Kevin, I'll give you another one here. So in tandem to what Tim was just saying here, what would you say to the guy coming in who is experienced and knows something, and maybe they are doing that, right? They're saying, oh, this box to that box. What would you say, other than obviously the clearing the mind part, right? What would you say is a key to coming in and just being like, hey, so think a better way to say this. The issue I get into, right? And I'll dive away for a second here. The issue that I'm trying to get to, and I'll let you guys answer in a better way, I guess. When we have those classes that we're doing and we get the one guy that's, and this happens semi-frequently, where I have one guy who's brand new, eager, young, wants to learn everything, and then I have the very experienced guy. And now I have to split the kind of teaching I'm doing to make sure he's getting covered on what he needs, but then make sure that this guy is also getting what he needs because he's already at this upper echelon level, but still keep it to where my time frame and everything is still within line and that you're still learning what needs to get learned. How do you manage that when you're doing a class?
Yeah, that's as an instructor and trainer, that's definitely one of the largest challenges that we encounter. Personally, the way I've dealt with that is whether I'm doing an intro class or an advanced class, call it what you will, I break everything down into the science and technology and engineering behind it. We always start with, here's cables. Let's talk about RGB. Let's talk about SMPTE. Let's talk about 444 versus 422, 420. Let's break down these terms that we all know are throwing around, and let's actually scientifically define what they mean, because this allows the new person to first learn the terminology, and hopefully they're drinking from the fire hose at this point. But more importantly, it's allowing the experienced technician who for 15 years, maybe they know, oh, I want ProRes 444 or 422. And I say, well, what does that mean? What does the chroma subsampling difference of 444 and 422 mean on a technical level? Or define 8-bit versus 10-bit. What truly is that from a hexadecimal binary standpoint? So by breaking everything down, I said, I have no such thing as an intro class or an advanced class. Every class is an engineering class and a scientific class. So it is tough. I'm sure Tim would agree. Obviously, Omar, you agree. That is, those are the hard days at the office when you have someone who's brand spanking new. I had a student today who's been in the industry for 2 months, which it's fun. It provides its own challenges, and that's what allows you as a trainer to grow. And just completely off topic, during your introduction, Omar, you said that you don't belong in the group. I disagree with that completely. What you have done for AV and education for technicians globally is fantastic, and you are on that Mount Rushmore of AV educators. So please do not discredit yourself.
I appreciate that. I really do. I'm honored.
Yeah, so I would add to that, to answer your question, how do you deal with that in a classroom situation? You put the young person next to the experienced person, and that's how you teach. Because what happens is the experienced person, obviously, he's just filling in the gaps, but he can take time while you're teaching the subject to kind of backfill the person who doesn't have as much experience. Say, oh, here's how you do it. Click, 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 click. Because reteaching something helps enforce it to the person who's teaching it. And for the young person, it gives them another person besides your voice to explain something. Maybe you explained it in a certain way, and the person who's experienced go, oh, here's another way to kind of explain that. And then they'll understand it better. So I would say in those courses where you have a tough challenge, the big learning gap, put the learner who's new with the learner who's experienced, and let them work together. So
I like that. For everybody who's watching this right now, that we're talking to you. If you are the more experienced one and you see the one student lacking, invite him to your table, and vice versa. If you're the one that sees someone more experienced, ask if you can sit at that table. To take the initiative. That's a big thing in our industry. Is always, if you take the initiative and you ask the questions, people are receptive of that. Don't be shy. You're there to learn. You're there to network. You're there to get together. Take advantage of that opportunity. Don't let it slide by because you want to be timid or shy about something. And again, if you are that person and you just need that little bit of a push of motivation, when you get a second in a break session or when you're doing the lunch section or whatever that is, ask the instructor, hey, do you mind if I could sit next to him? You're like, yeah, no problem. I'll set it up for you. Do it that way. Don't let something pass you by that could really help you out, and that could also, in the end, be a mentor for you, or vice versa. It could be something you could teach him as well. So we've done about 32 minutes here. I kind of want to get us to wrap up here real quick. I know you guys are busy guys, and you have a lot going on. So I appreciate and honored you guys came on here. Kevin, I'm so thankful for those words. Before we close up for the night, though, Tim, I'll have you go first. Is there anything that we didn't cover yet that you want to discuss real quick, or anything you want to dive into?
One of the things is, consider classes and stuff that's not technology based. If you're going into this industry, at some point, you're going to have to take a Vectorworks Spotlight course, whether just to read a drawing or to make a simple lighting plot or something like that. Those are the kind of technologies that will advance your career. It might make you help one day be a production manager or move into design. So it's not always pushing buttons and learning hardware. There's other skill sets that you can learn that will help you with your position, right? So that's one thing I would think is, don't forget to learn about those other little things outside of just, this piece of gear that you always see on show site. So
yeah, don't silo yourself. I love that. Kevin, what about you?
My advice would be to look at the big picture of what you're actually doing. Rather than looking at yourself as a playback pro operator or a Resolume operator, think of yourself as a playback technician, a playback engineer, a video engineer rather than a screen switcher. I don't like when I hear people say, I'm an E2 operator. That limits yourself to an understanding of what the buttons do, what buttons you press, and then outcome occurs. I would rather have someone look at it from the larger perspective of image processing, scaling, scan converting, using Athena-based scalers or GPU-based scaling, and actually know what it truly is you're doing. Yes, I know I can push this button, magical things happen, but it's a lot more interesting, and you're going to understand a lot better if you know that I'm pushing this button, which is sending out a telnet command, which is triggering some type of actions and some type of macro. So don't limit yourself to the hardware, the gear. Gear will come, gear will go. The equipment we're talking about today might be irrelevant in 2 to 3 to 5 years. Who knows what we're going to be talking about? The workflow, the science, the technology, the fundamentals will always stay the same.
I like that. We make magic happen with pixels. So Kevin, I brought you in second. I'll have you leave first with us. If there's any final words you had for anybody who's watching, what would those words be as a final goodbye?
In addition to finding mentors, perhaps you are the mentor. Always pass the knowledge down. I said I'm fortunate to have one of my mentors, Tim Cashel, on this call with me, which I'm very happy to see Tim at. But at the same point, push that knowledge down the road. As Tim mentioned as well, the best way to truly know a system is to teach the system. So whether or not you have the luxury of having a formalized platform like AVE Educate or a T3 or an Evolve or a Nationwide Video to teach at, you can always be teaching the person next to you, the person there, elevating their skills, elevating your skills, elevating the industry. What's good for you is good for the industry.
I like that. That's perfectly well said, man. Kevin, thank you so much for being here with us today and talking about this topic. I'm honored that I got to get another chance to talk to you and just do something collaborative together. So thank you so much for the kind words also, man. I really appreciate that. It means a lot. Thank you.
Thanks.
Tim, last man standing, please. What would be the last words you got for anybody watching today? Anybody who's in the industry right now watching.
Don't be afraid to bribe the older people on show site. No, just kidding. Don't be afraid to approach us. Don't be afraid to ask us questions. Shows is a kind of different. Show site's a kind of difficult place. We're trying to get these massive things up in a limited amount of time, and a lot of times we don't have the time to sit down and answer questions. Doesn't mean you can't ask us, hey, when you have some off time, or if the company is doing the work, hey, can I come into your shop and sit down with this gear, in the off time, when the show comes back. Don't forget to ask those questions. There's a lot of companies that will be willing to do it, and if you come in for maybe a shop rate to come and QC gear, QCing is the best way to learn how something works. So
100%.
they get a couple of hours of shop time out of you, and you get a couple of hours of equipment learning out of it. So
I like that. QC is a big thing. I spent 6 years doing nothing but QC and pulling shows and being the shop guy, and it definitely made me the ES I am today. Tim, thank you so much for being on here. I'm definitely at a disadvantage. You and me never got to work together. I always hear positive and great things about it. Just speaking to you today, I see it coming out. I see the radiance and the knowledge. Hopefully in the future we get to work something together. But I thank you so much for being on the show and talking what you did and spreading the knowledge with everybody here. And I'm sure everybody's picking up a ton of great things on here. So again, thank you so much for being on the show with me.
Well, thanks for having me, and you're doing a lot of good work with this. So
I appreciate that. I'm very, very honored. Thank you very much. So guys, you just heard from the biggest heavy hitters in the AV industry as far as corporate training and AV. These guys, they know what they're talking about. They know what they're doing. They've been doing this for over a decade. They're the guys to go to. Take what they said, rewatch this video a couple of times if you need to. There is no right or wrong path. If you want to do the mentorship path, it's a way to go. If you want the justification path, it's a way to go. There's no right or wrong. It's all the same thing. But this is a career. This is a passion. It's a love. Always continue education. Tim drops some great points. Don't just focus on one thing. Learn multiple things. Technology changes. Like Kevin said, 5 years from now, what you might be doing now may not be the main thing anymore. It may be something else. Always stay learning. Always be motivated. Always be eager. Always ask questions. Be out there. Be yourself, and just network with your group. Learn to level up and be there. I couldn't ask for a better panel for this. This is a great topic about mentorship certifications. Leave some comments in the bottom if you guys have any more questions, and we'll try to get it to them and get you guys some answers. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. Look forward to doing these again, the AVE podcast with you guys. And again, as always, thank you to our sponsors.